admit all. Right, hello there, guys. We're going to get going with our London Marathon Q&A in a few minutes' time. We're just going to keep letting everyone join. Feel free to listen and ask questions to us as we get going. Oh, that's a funny view I put it on.
A reminder just to put on mute when you're not speaking as well.
Yep, I could also control that, and that'll make everyone on mute. We'll get going in about a minute's time just to let everyone arrive, but we're very excitingly joined by Steph and myself, Ben, to talk through any last-minute questions for London Marathon, and I've got a list of questions you guys have submitted, but if you've got any questions that you want to ask as we get going, you're very welcome to ask them to us as well. You can send them in as a message in the chat, or you can come off mute and ask us questions as and when we're in between asking them, but looking forward to getting things going. We'll give it another minute, letting people join, and then we'll kick things off. Brilliant. Fantastic. Right, I'm just going to keep putting people on mute as they arrive. And we will get going in a moment's time. Right, I tell you what, guys, it is 12:31, so let's get ourselves going today. Gosh, there's lots of people. Okay, so very excitingly, Steph and I are here to tell you everything or answer all of your last-minute questions ready for London Marathon. Lots of you have sent in questions already, but so please do send us questions in through the chat if you've got any that come up as we're going. And you can also kind of come off mute and ask us questions in between the questions we're answering. But to kick things off, Steph, our first question, what would you do the morning of the marathon?
So my first priority is getting in my fuel, so having my breakfast, and I like to kind of have that like 2-3 hours before. So I'll probably wake up about 3 hours before the race, and the night before I would have laid out what I'm having for breakfast, so I can just like crack on with it, no faffing around. Get my breakfast in, do a bit of light, very, very light stretching, and then leave as much time as possible to get to the start area. Especially thinking in London, you don't want to be too reliant on tubes, buses, etc., all running on time. Road closures might get in the way of things. So I would just leave plenty of time to get to that race. And then once I'm there, I would, suss out where the toilets are, suss out where you can hang out and do some light stretching while you're kind of warming up, getting ready to go. I probably end up going to the toilet about 3 or 4 times before we actually start, and then get to that start line in good time as well. So probably at least kind of 15 minutes before your wave is due to start, I would head over, get a spot, make sure, you know where you're going, etc. So just leave lots and lots of time. It does mean sometimes getting up really early, but if you're organized the night before, get your bag ready, get your breakfast laid out, any drinks you want, water bottles filled up, then that will just also save you some time the next morning.
Yeah, I think also just like speaking from experience with London Marathon is it's the biggest event that we have in the country, and as a result, like transport's going to be busy, buses are busy, trains are busy, and you might turn up to the train and it's actually full and you've got to wait for the next one. So just expect that everything's going to take longer, and while it might mean getting up a little earlier than you want, just make sure you've allowed plenty of safety time.
I would bang on an extra half hour at least.
I mean that brings us on to the next question, which are kind of what do you eat? What would you eat for your breakfast, Steph, on the morning of the marathon? And also, obviously, we're all going to have our own personal preferences. What would you advise to someone as well?
Yeah, like if you've been having bagels before all your long runs, then stick to that. Don't just because I tell you what I'm going to have now, think, well, I'll do that too. So stick to what you've done in training and what you know is good for your stomach. For me, like I'm a porridge girl. Like I always have porridge before all my running sessions. So I tend to have that, put peanut butter in it. And
Steph had porridge in the office this morning, so she's telling the truth.
Snap on porridge.
And I mean, for me, one thing that I will always do as my kind of like morning routine before the marathon or any race is I will have a coffee as soon as I wake up. And the reason for that is not because I want the caffeine to help me pack all my things and not forget my shoes, but it's that like caffeine or a coffee helps me go to the toilet.
I'm not a coffee drinker, so you're
but I know that I we don't want to go to do a number 2 mid-run. So I really want to make sure that that's all organized beforehand. So a coffee for me first thing, and getting my breakfast in as soon as I wake up is just a way to get that flowing. But hopefully you've kind of learned a lot of those things that work for you over the course of time. And essentially a big theme, and probably an answer that we're going to answer lots over the next 20 minutes, will be just don't do anything new on the morning of, like,
not stress it enough.
If someone at the office with you has been saying that, oh, they had this breakfast and it made them feel fantastic, if you don't usually have that breakfast, don't try it.
Do it.
And the same goes with goes with shoes, goes with clothing, goes with gels on the day. You really want to kind of control as much as you can, and make sure that you're not swapping something last minute in your breakfast routine, or in the food that you have the night before the big day as well.
One thing I would suggest, and this might also come up in a question later on, but one thing that would be relatively safe to do is the day before, sip on water with an electrolyte tab in it, because that's just going to get your hydration levels up to a good point the day before. I wouldn't do it the morning of the race if you haven't practiced that, but I think doing it the day before, that's not going to cause any stomach upset, and it will just get your electrolytes and your salts at the right levels so that you're in a good hydrated state for starting the race.
Yeah, I drink a lot of squash normally, and the day and 2 days before a race, I'll normally just like swap out squash for electrolytes, because you can't really go wrong by having unnecessary electrolytes, but just making sure that you're well topped up means that when you're sweating, when you're exhausted, you're less likely to cramp in those later stages. And that's going to be a fantastic aid for you, because ultimately when you're running the marathon, you're not going to be able to drink as much water as you probably need, because you're drinking it from cups as you go, and everything's a bit of a fuss. One question while we're talking about that we should just jump straight to, because it makes sense. Someone asked, what do you think about doing the marathon with kind of a hydration pack, Camelback, that kind of thing? I know that you don't do that when you race, but what's your opinion to advise people?
So I have done it in training, especially when you're maybe just on like an easier long run and you want to go out and enjoy it. You don't want to maybe have to stop to pick up drinks or gels. I have put some gels in a backpack just to make it easier. But for a race, I typically wouldn't race with it on.
Yeah.
But I would say if you're a runner that's going to be doing it in kind of maybe plus 3.5, probably kind of plus 4 hours, then it might be worth it, because hydration then becomes more of an important thing the longer you're out there. Again, if you've practiced with it in training and you find it doesn't affect how you run, you don't find it annoying, it doesn't cause any chafing, and you feel really confident in it, then I would definitely wear it, because that's going to almost be like a bit of a safety blanket during your marathon experience. If you find it convenient, not only for hydration purposes, for carrying some gels and stuff in, then definitely do wear it. There will be people on the course there, but if you haven't practiced, then I would just
I think it also goes down that we'll all have slightly different goals with a marathon, and when Steph does a marathon, she does it far too fast for me to even understand, and she does them so fast that she's not going to want to weigh herself down with any extra weight or clothing, for example, and carrying that water. She'll run through the aid stations and drink the water as quick as she can, and off she goes, without breaking stride. But that's not going to be the same for all of you guys. It might be your first marathon, and with that in mind, your goal might be, you don't mind whether you do it in 4.5 hours or 5 hours too much, and it's a case of just getting round.
Exactly.
And if that's you want to make sure that you've got something to drink when you're thirsty, you've got your gels with you, and obviously, as Steph said, the longer that you're going to be on the course, the more you're going to need to drink, because the longer you're going to be dehydrated. Also, likely the later you'll start, and the longer through the midday heat that you'll be running. So again, more reason to drink. So if you're used to, like Steph said, running with a Camelback or running with packs of water on your front, go for it. And again, personal preference. There's no kind of right or wrong.
There's absolutely no right or wrong, and it is just depends on what your goal is, what you find comfortable, and if that's something you practice in training and the thought of doing it without a hydration vest is scary, then definitely keep it on.
Yep. So next one, safest foods that you'd recommend. So let's say
during.
So let's kind of answer it in a whole capacity. So night before,
chicken and rice.
That's your go-to.
Yeah, chicken and rice, or baked potato and tuna out of can.
Okay. And kind of just general advice is, don't eat something funky, and don't go and have a crazy curry. That's not your normal.
We're seeing obvious stuff here that people probably heard time and time again, but it is important to reiterate it. Don't do anything new.
I mean, for me, I'll always normally have like a pasta doing pasta bolognese, kind of a pasta-based dish like that, pasta
Yeah.
carbonara.
Some people like pizza.
Or pizza as well. I've normally race my best actually off a pizza out and an ice cream. But anyway, whatever works for you. And sadly, I can say that I'm quite well practiced at
Byron for
pizza and ice
lunch
cream
before I did London Marathon in 2019.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, also to say is that, like, I'm sure a lot of you kind of come across carb loading, and it's something that very much, like, Jimmy, is quite like popular to say and recommend. But what I really would say is, don't feel like you need to eat until you feel sick tonight and tomorrow night. Just eat a relatively good portion.
Yeah.
And just don't feel like you need to go absolutely crazy. Eat well.
Don't go crazy.
Try and sleep more than normal. And probably give yourself a nice good stretch this evening. Do a good stretch tomorrow, just to give yourself something to do, because that's the main thing. Tomorrow you're not going to be doing starting a Saturday with parkrun or doing going to the gym, I suspect. So as a result, like, relax, just do some extra mobility, doing any kind of like aches and pains, see what you can do to support them. And I think that all of that stuff will go a really long way.
Yeah.
We had a question which was that someone's kind of feeling like they've got a few niggles, a little bit of an injury, doing nothing so bad that the physios told them not to run. What is kind of like our advice, how best to get the best out of that? What I would suggest is that, like, if you've got a bit of a niggle, a bit of a pain, and you're like, nervous about starting, nervous about how you're going to get on, I'd very much say that, like, with these things, that, like, we should put as many aids in place as possible. So if you know that you've had kind of some shin issues in the past, for example, and it's feeling okay for now, but it's not like flaring up right now, but you're nervous, obviously, if it's going to get in the way mid-marathon, and you know that in training adding compression socks helped, and you haven't worn them for a few weeks because the shin pain's gone away, keep those aids, like, by your side, ready to go. And ultimately, you're not going to have any harm by wearing something like a compression sock. So if you found that's helped you in training, use that to support you. The other thing I'd say as well is, like, from the message, it almost implied that this person's like really like couldn't be in a position where they shouldn't start the race. I think if you're in pain going for your, like, the last run you've done before the marathon, and your body doesn't feel right, the likelihood that if you're feeling pain doing a 5 or 6K last run, going on to do a full marathon without feeling pain is probably not like a great idea.
No.
And I think, like, the fundamental thing, the reason why we're probably all doing the marathon is because we love running, we enjoy running. And I think, like, while the marathon
and you've got this far, like, you've trained so hard for the last, like, 16, 12, 10 weeks, that now you just really want to cross that final hurdle and get it done. But you do need to also think about your health as well. That is always, like, the main priority. So yeah, just go with your gut instinct. If your gut instinct is, I have something here that's really going to cause me bother, and I know by doing a marathon it's going to make it a lot worse, then you might want to reconsider what your plans are with the race. But if you've just had something that's like a small niggle and you're not sure if it's going to pop up, just try and relax a bit, because that in that situation, I would say go for it, but just you're going to have to listen to your body if that does become a problem. I mean, a lot of time with niggles, adrenaline kind of takes over on race day. And I remember before Berlin in 2018, I honestly was in quite a bit of pain a couple of days before.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to my dad, and he was like, well, you're there, so you got two options, like, go be a tourist or do it. And I didn't feel anything in the race because of adrenaline.
Interestingly as well, like, it's it shows up a fair amount that when someone starts to go into their taper, they reduce their mileage a lot, and their body starts to have the opportunity to start to grumble in a slightly different way, because we're changing the stimulus we put on our body.
Yeah,
we're now a lot fresher. We start to feel, oh, that feels a bit, I'm not used to that, maybe because you're used to feeling a bit tired, and your body's having time to say, oh, this is grumpy. And as a result, just don't over worry. We're going to be in this position of slight panic and fear of the marathon, and so we'll overthink a lot of things as well. So just trust in everything that you've done to get to where you are now. And obviously, as you're going around, when your muscles are aching, that's what we should expect. We push through that. But if you're feeling a really sharp pain that feels like we're doing something wrong, then it comes down to, like, then it comes down to kind of deciding, like, do I want to miss out on being able to enjoy my spring or my summer? But I very much hope that that's not going to be the case, and I'm sure it shouldn't be for pretty much everybody. The next question that says, what different elements should I consider in my race plan? So essentially, Steph, what would be your plan of attack of how you would run a marathon, and what would you advise someone to do in terms of the way maybe they think about pacing a marathon, the way they think about doing starting fast and banking time? Should we do that?
No.
Maybe when you'd have your gels, what would you kind of think about doing from start to finish? And then I can add my my tips as well.
Yeah, I think have your race plan like firmed up in your mind. If you don't have one, then that should be your project for today, because you don't want to be frantically trying to put something together tomorrow. And what we suggest on Runner is like what we believe that you can do from your training, and we're confident in those plans. But for me, I like to break the race down into kind of 3 or 4 chunks. And for the first half, especially, it's about being accountable, keeping it controlled, not letting yourself get carried away, especially at the start of London Marathon. It is very fractionally downhill. So a lot of people think, oh, I'll just use that free time, bank some extra speed. You're going downhill. Like that is actually going to put more impact through your legs. So that could come back to bite you. Just keep everything in check. If after your first mile or kilometer, 2 kilometers, you're thinking, I'm looking at your watch and you are ahead of your pace, that's probably going to happen because it's a start. Adrenaline's going to be pumping, but rein it in. Like be super, super strict with yourself. If you're in a pace group and they're going too quick, like drop back and visualize that now and know that that's okay, because that is part of your plan, and stick to the pace that you've agreed on. And then really from halfway, it's about trying to kind of see what you can get out of yourself, picking up the pace, but picking when you're going to make that move. If at halfway you're feeling, I'm not sure, like I'm feeling a bit tired, but I'm okay at this pace, then just stick with it and just keep assessing kind of every 4 or 5K, like, should I move now? And then for that last kind of 4K, especially when you hit 40K and you've got 2.2K to go, just be going for it, like emptying that tank. But the main thing for me would be progressing that pace and that effort. And that will be marginal in that pace, like a few seconds per kilometer or per mile. That's all you need to be doing. We're not talking about shooting off and going from kind of, I don't know, 5-minute Ks to 4:30s. Like it's going to be seconds. But what I've kind of explained to a lot of athletes in the past is that if you're going for a sub 3-hour marathon, say, and that's 4:15 per K, if you go out at 4:10s and you're thinking, oh, it's only 5K per second, it's not that much. Like it is actually a lot. You're now not running at 2:59 pace. You're now running at like 2:55 pace, which is 4 minutes, 5 minutes quicker than you intentionally set out at. So you need to be, these margins are so small, but you need to be in control of them.
And I think obviously the marathon is such a long way that those small changes can make a big difference over that full length of the marathon as well. So yeah, and I think just to add to that, like we'll start the marathon on the weekend probably feeling the best you've ever felt.
You'll
because
be so excited,
hopefully, you followed your plan and you're feeling like you're in really good shape right now. And now you're starting to feel really fresh. Your mileage has been a lot lower. And as a result, you're going into it having eaten really good breakfast, hopefully slept a little bit more. You've got the adrenaline, you're wearing your race shoes and your favorite outfit. Like you're going to feel fantastic. And that's when it gets really hard to be like, I should be running at X pace, but my legs are carrying me 5, 10, 20 seconds quicker. And that just takes discipline to stick to the plan, as Steph says. So yeah, I think that's a
discipline is like the main thing.
Really good way to.
Ben and I are definitely on the same page with pacing. Like progress that effort, progress that pace. Do not start off too fast.
And I think also if it's your first marathon, without like trying to scare you at all, your first marathon is probably going to be like harder than you think it is. And so you don't know what it's going to feel like in kilometer 38. So just be cautious, and you're much better off starting flat and just speeding up like that than starting fast and then just slowing down and then to the point where maybe you're walking at the end, and that's going to add so much more time. So yeah, just be strong and like Steph said, visualize letting people overtake you, slowing down on purpose and being a bit like, oh, I'm losing some time that I could have. And I promise you'll be grateful for
you'll be catching them at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do send messages into the chat. I can see that we've got a few that we're going to get to. We've got a few more that have been sent in beforehand, and then we'll dive into those. So feel free to ask any questions that you have yourself. Okay, next one. London looks drizzly for the weekend. What should we wear before? What should we wear during if it's raining? What's your answer to that, Steph?
Before, I would take a bin bag with you actually to the start line, because if you put that over you, that's going to keep you a bit dry. During, if it's raining, again, like wouldn't start wearing anything that's too bulky, but if you feel that you would benefit from wearing something that's going to protect you from the rain, then wear it. I think generally once you get going,
I think it's starting to get to be, hopefully British spring, that while it might rain, it shouldn't be like winter's rain and cold.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that like you're going to be emitting a lot of body heat when you're running. Your body's going to be sweating. That's realistically, if it was dry, your body's going to be wet, and if it's raining, your body's going to be wet. So don't feel like you need to run around in a raincoat.
I wouldn't do that unless it's like torrential, and that's not the plan.
Yeah, so I would say, like Steph says, wear a bin bag to get to the start so you can throw it away. And also what they do, definitely at the London Marathon, they do it at lots of races as well, is like a kind of a jumper collection that goes to charity. So just wear your oldest jumper that you don't like under your bin bag as well. And then that way, a minute before the start, you throw them both away, you give the jumper to charity, take the bin bag off, and you're in your race kit ready to go. And that way you're not shivering cold, which is going to be wasting energy and making you feel miserable. But still also,
I guess if you're really worried about the race and you know you've got some friends or family out there on the course, and you could give them a waterproof to hand to you if you know they're going to be at a certain place, then that is another option as well if you're really, really worried about it. But I wouldn't start in it unless it's really pouring. But that's
I think it kind of goes back to the same answer about hydration vests as well. I think it depends on your goal. If your goal is crazy time, like none of the elites in a thunderstorm will wear anything other than their carbon shoes, their shortest shorts, and a vest. Because it weighs something and that's going to slow them down. But if we're thinking about doing our first marathon and finishing is all that matters, maybe bring a really light running coat, and you can always chuck it to your friend at halfway round, or stuff it into your hydration vest as well. So you've got those options. But yeah, really make sure that you have enough layers to get to the start and dump them from when you've dumped you've done the bag drop. You might have half an hour waiting in your pen, so have enough to keep you warm then. Another one we had, which was, what should we do physically before we start? So let's imagine we've been to the Portaloo, we've dumped our bag, and we've now got half an hour. We can see our pen, or we're in our pen. What would you do in terms of like warming up and like staying warm in your pen? What movements would you do? What would you advise there?
So I think you've probably done quite a bit of walking to get to where you need to be. So you've done a little bit of movement anyway. If you're, I think a warm-up jog is good, but it can be a little bit of a faster walk or a really, really, really slow jog. And that can just be for up to kind of 5 minutes. And it could be a mixture of walk and runs. And then I would do some kind of like dynamic type stretching. So kind of the stuff that we have in some of our mobility routines, where you're stretching those muscles but you're moving as well, rather than sitting in static stretching. You don't need to warm up much for a marathon really, because you've got a long way to go, and you'll warm up well in those stages. But when you're in the starting pen, do just keep kind of moving around a bit, I would say. Don't try and hunch and like shiver and like everything kind of seizes up. Kind of just keep kind of moving around a bit, but also don't worry about doing like a long warm-up jog or anything, because you just don't need to do that ahead of a 42k run.
Exactly that. And obviously if there's any particular things that you find you get tight with, like if it's your hamstrings, find just a tiny bit of space. You can do some leg swings without kicking the person who's waiting in front of you in the bum. But yeah, just do a few movements, bounce around, keep your calves loose, whatever it's going to be.
But again, just like a few of them. We're not talking.
Yeah, exactly. Just enough so that your muscles aren't going to just go from like ice cold to running the first 100 meters. But again, the first 100 meters shouldn't be a sprint, so we shouldn't be needing to be too warm as a result. Okay, the next one, Steph, what do you wish you knew before your first marathon?
Oh, that's a good question.
I read it, so I've had time to think of mine.
So
my first marathon, I did. I could do a 1:28 half marathon at the time. So I went into it thinking I could do a 3 hour 1:28 half. So I went into it thinking I could do a 3 hour marathon by just doubling my half time. I was like much younger and less experienced. I roughly, and told everyone I'll finish at 3 hours. So then, because my expectations were so high, I was then like miserable the whole second half, going round being like, I failed, I've done such an awful job.
Mine was the opposite.
And maybe that's to be an arrogant personality, who knows, or something silly. But as a result, I think just like if it's your first marathon, a marathon is really hard. Just like be prepared to work hard in that second half, but that's the thing that makes it so fantastic and so great and such an amazing feeling at the end of it. And really just try and like make sure that the the metrics that you're going to use to judge your success or your happiness as a result of it are fair and reasonable. And as a result, like, do you mean you're going to finish your marathon and you've done really hard, like done great hard work in your training, and that should be something to be enormously proud of. And I think like times are cool. Times are things that people will go and compare themselves against, but realistically, the time should only really matter to you.
Yeah, 100%.
Like,
be competitive with yourself. Doesn't matter.
And your first marathon is going to be your first marathon, which is the best time you've ever done for a marathon. You should be so proud of just getting around. And then from that, you can learn lessons and do it better next time.
Yeah.
And so just like be proud of yourself to getting to where you are now. Be proud of it. And when you're at 32K and you're running and you're tired, just be proud, because you know that you've got 10K, which you know you can do, and you're going to get round and you're going to finish, and you're going to enjoy that finish line, which will feel amazing. And just try and, as much as you can, give yourself like positive thoughts going around, because you'll do just as well. But hopefully you'll then enjoy the second half that much more.
Exactly. Well. I think my thing was, I actually was the opposite. I was so scared about hitting the wall that I started off reserved, and then it meant I could build and enjoy it. I regretted not knowing what I was gonna or where I was gonna go for a good meal after.
Oh, really?
Planned like a good feed. Yeah.
Well, my advice on that is just book something, and probably don't book something anywhere near the finish line, because it's gonna be manic.
Know where your head, even if that's home and you've got your favorite pizza waiting for you or something. I don't know, but have that planned.
Yeah, and
refueling is key.
Yep. Okay, so let's move through the questions that we've been getting through the session. We're going to go for another 4 or 5 minutes. Any last minute questions, guys, feel free to ping them in the meeting room chat. So what mobility would you do on Saturday? For me, my answer to that would be kind of probably about a 20-minute stretch, and I'll just go through each of my major big running muscles, my quads, my glutes, my calves, my hamstrings, a little bit maybe for the core, for the back, just to loosen myself up, and just stretch myself nicely. I've got one of those massage guns, so I might give myself a little bit of a jet with that as well. But
I would just keep it light though, like don't be sticking on any like hard yoga videos and getting yourself into different warrior positions, because that's just going to tire your legs. Just do some stretching and mobility that you can do literally seated on the floor.
Absolutely. Should I do my shakeout run today or tomorrow?
If this is your first marathon and you're not sure, I would do it today. I personally take today as a rest day and then do my shakeout the day before, but I would do it first thing. But if you're not sure, then do it today and rest tomorrow. Yeah,
for personal preference, I never run the day before the marathon, so there's no right or wrong again. But like whatever we're doing at this stage should be super light and super relaxed, and realistically, it doesn't matter too much.
Just be confident what decision you make.
And just relax, enjoy it, and enjoy feeling fantastic. Because you're probably going to find a nice easy shakeout run, one of the easiest runs you've done in your entire 12 or 16 week block of training. A question from Josh on the pacing part: how can I update my runner app so my watch shows me my 5K times instead of each 1 kilometer? So I'm not quite exactly sure what you mean by this, but what I would suggest,
I guess he's asking, so usually it laps every 1K, tell your watch. So I would write them on your arm personally, because your watch will potentially get out of sync eventually. So if you've got them written on your arm, then you can reset in your mind when you hit the kilometer markers, because do be mindful that at some point your watch is going to be behind,
normally ahead of
ahead, sorry, of the mile or kilometer markers. Whereas if you've got yours 5K or your 10K splits written down on your arm, then you can use them as reference points. Around Canary Wharf, the GPS will be terrible. Don't speed up, don't slow down, don't surge your pacing, just keep relaxed and trust your judgment on pacing. Don't waste energy with it.
And what Steph means by that, with those kind of splits times on your arm, is that, like, imagine your watch is picking up some bad GPS signal and showing you your wrong pace. You're now kind of in the dark and you don't kind of know whether you're doing really well or really badly. But if you've got a simple time like 4-minute kilometers, I can tell you the numbers really easily. Like, at 5K we should be at 20 minutes, at 10K we should be at 40 minutes. But whatever yours is, even if you're aiming for a 4:32, times it by 5 and work out what minute you should be hitting the 5K mark. Work out the minute, as Steph said, you should hit the 10K mark.
There's some good running pace calculators online.
And that way, when you go past the 10K mark, you know how long your watch has been running for. You will know if your watch is accurate or not. If your watch has got some bad GPS, then you know you're roughly on track. And it's a really useful thing to do, just so you can get an idea and have a bit of a loose backup in case your watch is not playing ball, which they can do. And as Steph says, some parts of London are typically worse than others.
Canary Wharf is just the bit to watch.
Can you provide any information on how good or bad Garmin will be during the race? Oh, there we are. So I would say typically the newer the Garmin, the newer the Apple Watch, the better it's going to be. Typically, I find Apple Watches are probably a little bit less accurate than Garmin's, but the new watches are really good, I'd say. But like we said, have a little bit of a backup, and also just like trust in how you're feeling. If you've had you're feeling good, you ran and your K felt kind of bang on, and your splits are kind of consistently good, and then you suddenly get a bad one. Do you mean like? You should know that you haven't actually got a bad one. Like if you're slowing down, you will feel tired, you'll be slowing down. And if it's out of the blue, a random number, probably GPS, and don't panic.
You need to trust your rate of perceived exertion and how you're feeling more than you trust your watch. But if you want a reliable backup, I would do what we just talked about with the 5K splits and write them on your hand.
Yeah, we'll go for our last one, and then we'll wrap up so everyone can get their lunch and get their carbs in, or whatever you're having for lunch. I have used Cliff Blocks in previous runs. Recently, I realized that I've been eating half what I was meant to consume on the run. Should I increase what I consume or keep it the same? So with reference to this, kind of first of all, we said don't change anything in race week. On the race day, don't do anything drastically new. We should, in theory, be aiming for around 60 grams of carbs per hour when we're looking to fuel optimally. However, do you mean imagine this person's been having half what they should do? Let's say you've worked out that you're only having 30 grams of carbs an hour with all your training runs. Do you mean you've completed your training runs? That worked for you. You've now heard this stat, or do you mean you've worked out that you're having half what you should do, and now you're panicking? Don't worry, don't panic. Yes, you could have, do you mean if you've planned to have your Cliff bars or whatever it is every hour, maybe have them every 50 minutes and increase it slightly so that you do you mean you're not going to upset your tummy, but actually you're getting closer to the 60 grams an hour, which could be a good solution. But I would say if it worked for you in training, it worked for you doing your 30K long runs, it's going to be fine for you in the marathon.
I would agree.
Full of adrenaline and all these things.
And I would also take like an extra gel, take whatever you have, whatever you worked out you need, add an extra 1 or 2 onto that and take that with you, because if you drop one and you don't want to stop and pick it up, then you're going to be underfueled. So just have a little bit extra on you, and that might just be that you don't end up using it, or actually you find like Isabel was saying, maybe she feels like she's underfueled in her runs, and it maybe so happens towards the end of the marathon she feels like she needs to take on a bit extra, then you'll have that with you, so you won't be panicking.
Yeah, absolutely. One little anecdote. I think my second marathon I did, I probably didn't have anywhere near the amount of gels you meant to do. And I was starting to pick a few up as I was going around. And I think in the last 4 aid stations, I was just taking a gel extra from each. And in the last aid station, I knew I was so close to the end that I knew if I needed a number 2 or needed to throw up, I was like, I'll just deal with it. So I had 3 energy gels from the last aid station and just absolutely blitzed the last bit, which I would never recommend. I'd never recommend now.
And you to take on any gels from at least 30K 38K onwards. Like by the last 4K, that energy is probably not going to hit your system in time. So if you do feel like you need something, just take something small so you have that placebo, that sensation. But
and with the same in mind, I believe that London Marathon sponsored by Lucozade, I think, that's a sugary energy drink, and a lot of sugar we consume actually through our mouth, not through our gut. So sugar in a liquid form, we actually get a bit of a benefit from really quickly. So even just having a sip of Lucozade, if you're struggling,
in your mouth and spitting it out.
Yeah. So just don't panic, don't do anything drastically new. Stick with what worked for you in training, but obviously do be prepared to have a few backup supplies if you're starting to feel low later on, and it's something that agrees with you as well. Otherwise, if anyone's got any final last minute questions, please message us in the support tab, and we will make sure to get back to you by the end of the day. Have a amazing first marathon. Super good luck. I'll be doing it as well. Steph's going to be cheering around just after the halfway point.
Yeah, about mile 13 and mile 22, I'll be there.
Nice. And we've also got a runner stand cheering as well, just after the 12th mile as well, so just before Steph. So look out for us. Cheer anyone on that you see with a runner t-shirt or a runner vest, and just have the very best experience as well.
And use people in the other runners to run with and to motivate you, or to have them as targets ahead that you can pick off and chase down. Yeah.
The one final thing is we've got something super cool in store next week. So make sure when you've finished, send us a selfie with your medal, or send us a photo of your finishing or something like that. We'll post some links up on Instagram and stuff.
And sign up to the post-marathon recovery plan. Recovery after is so key.
Yep, that's a really good point. We will leave it there. Have a lovely lunch, everyone. And we can't wait to hear how you all get on. Last minute questions, fire them over in the app as well. Have a lovely weekend and good luck, guys.
Bye.